is a committee. This is a hybrid meeting to go over 2500 Wilson Boulevard Special Glove Study Tier 1 review. Before we get in any further, I have a number of opening remarks about how this will all work tonight. This is, as I mentioned, a hybrid public meeting, which enables remote electronic participation as legally authorized by the Code of Virginia per the Planning Commission's electronic meeting policy, which was adopted on July 7th of 2022. First, do we have any commissioners who are participating remotely? If you are, raise your virtual hand. That would be either planning commissioners or other members of the LRPC. That would include Lyon Village Citizens Association, the Clarendon Courthouse Citizens Association, Housing Commission, Transportation Commission. If you're on, let me know. Not on yet, though they are saying they will attend, so they will probably be coming on as we're talking. I'd like to orient everyone to how this hybrid environment works and cover a few specifics about how tonight's meeting will be run. Members of the public may attend the meeting here in person or electronically by using the Microsoft Teams link provided on the LRPC web pages, county's events calendar, and the email notification sent out to the LRPC email subscribers. Additionally, there is a dial-in phone option for those who wish to use it. For our planning commissioners joining virtually, if anyone loses internet connectivity during today's meeting, please reconnect with us by phone, and that's such planning commissioners, that's for anybody who's at the virtual table. Keep your phones and devices muted until you're called upon, and turn off sound to any other devices around you to minimize interference. To the virtual attendees using Microsoft Teams, please turn off your video feed, and I will address when it's appropriate to turn it on in a moment. The Microsoft Teams meeting chat is active to serve two purposes. It's for participants who need technical assistance and for other attendees to pose brief clarifying questions to the larger audience. While these will be monitored, they will not be formally acknowledged. Staff may address these comments as appropriate. The Teams chat should not be used for discussion or any inappropriate statements. Those who are planning to provide public comment still need to do so at the end of the meeting, as the chat will not serve as that opportunity. All public comments must be shared verbally for the record during the assigned public testimony periods. I'd also like to remind everybody in the room to speak up slowly and clearly. There are microphones at the top of the ceiling here. That's what we're really talking toward when we're at the table. That will allow the virtual participants to hear us. In addition, if you'd like to share your screen, please request permission from me, the LRPC chair, prior to doing so. For planning commissioners or subgroup members, if commissioners or subgroup members participating virtually wish to be recognized to speak on an item during the course of the meeting, please turn on your video feed and raise your virtual hand in Teams. I, as well as one of the staff will monitor those video feeds that are on as an indicator of who would like to speak. So you'll be joining by phone. I think we do have some commission members, other members of the public, or other members of the LRPC will be attending virtually. Yes, so Jason Harrier is on. He's one of the members. I see so far, we may have showing. Scroll down. That's so far as others join. We'll see if we can remember to know. For members of the public who would like to provide feedback and comment, unlike the planning commission's regular meetings, the LRPC agenda item is not a public hearing. Therefore, public comment is at the LRPC chair's discretion after the committee discussion is concluded. If you are signed up or indicate your interest in making public comment, you'll be called upon to speak at the end of the meeting. Speak on tonight's item. Speaking time allotted will depend on the number of speakers I'll call for speakers at the end of the meeting, and I'll ask Ms. Chowdhury to let me know if we have virtual attendees who'd like to provide comment. Ms. Chowdhury will acknowledge speakers in the team chat. You indicate in the chat you'd like to provide comment, or your name so your name can be added to the list of speakers. Members of the public attending virtually will speak first, followed by the in-person attendees. When virtual attendees are called upon to speak, you must unmute yourself by clicking on the microphone icon that's located on your meeting command bar. The moderator does not have the ability to unmute you. You will then be muted when your time has concluded. An alternative public comment is available and may be provided on the public forum posted on the LRPC's webpage. And finally, this is a public forum. Tonight's meeting is being recorded and posted to the county website. All information associated with today's meeting, whether written or spoken, is subject to the Freedom of Information Act requirements. With that, we're ready to move on to our meeting. The way we're going to work first tonight, we will have a staff presentation from Margaret Tulloch-Rose and Tim Murphy, I guess, that from the Department of Community Planning and Housing and Development. After they're concluded, we will have a presentation by the applicant. We have Oliver Lee, the Vice President of Acquisitions and Development from TNG, the applicant. We then move on to discussion. So, Ms. Rhodes, and, I'm sorry. Let's first go around the table and make sure we know who we all are sitting here. I will start with Commissioner Sarley.
Evening, starting late, Commissioner Sarley from the Planning Commission.
Evening, Oliver Lee with TNG.
Hi, Kendrick Whitmore. I'm with Venable representing the applicant.
Margaret Rhodes, Planning.
Tim Murphy with Arlington's Planning Division.
Sarah Barlick, Park and Recreation Commission.
James Sherrill, Planning Commission.
Lima Hakura, the courthouse, Arlington Courthouse Division.
Nika Chaudhary, Planning Division.
Jackie Stelling, Lion Village Citizen Association.
And let's go to our online attendees. If you're a member of the at the table of the LRPC, raise your virtual hand so we can call on you. One I do see here, yes, right away. Mr. Harrier.
Hey everybody, I'm Jason Harrier from Lion Village Citizens Association.
Thank you. Do we have anybody else? Okay, thank you. So, Ms. Rhodes, it's yours now.
Thank you. My name is Margaret Rhodes. I'm with the Planning Commission. Great, thank you. So first, we're going to review the special general land use plan policy, site location, the requested amendment, and then we'll move to the staff analysis and preliminary staff recommendations. In terms of the special general land use plan study background, in 2008, the county board adopted the policy for consideration of general land use plan amendments unanticipated by previous planning efforts. And this policy calls for a community review process in those instances where there is no adopted plan or where there's insufficient guidance in a relevant adopted plan. Study evaluates the appropriateness of the requested general land use plan change and what GLUP category or categories may be appropriate. The Tier 1 initial review, which is what we're conducting tonight, involves an LRPC meeting, which includes first the staff evaluation of the application and then LRPC discussion of the application. And as part of this application, staff and the LRPC will discuss if a special general land use plan study or some other type of process, such as a small area planning process, might be most appropriate and or expeditious. In terms of the initial review, first we have staff evaluation and our process guide criteria to determine if it is if a tier 2 study is appropriate. And then we have, of course, the LRPC discussion, and it's formalized in a memo from the LRPC chair to staff summarizing the LRPC process. The tier 1 review would then conclude with a letter from the CPHD director regarding acceptance, denial, or a recommendation for a different type of study evaluation. Our typical sequence involves the tier 1 review that we're conducting here tonight. And we're really asking the question is, should this be studied further? And if so, through what process? What would be most appropriate? If this was to advance to the tier 2 review, would be a full review via the tier 2 process. Other options could include a small area plan, a PDSP review, a corridor study. There are other types of evaluation processes that may be more appropriate. And then, should it be deemed appropriate for the general land use plan to potentially be amended, the project could advance to the site plan review process. So it is at the site plan review process where a more detailed analysis of an actual project would be evaluated. So this phase is really looking at the high level land use. And then if it was to advance to the SPRC process, that's when you look at more detailed things like architecture, tapers, transportation, etc. And it's important to note that we have developed this process and we will develop our recommendations with a mind towards equity. In terms of the site location, you can see the site here outlined in blue. It is located in the Roslyn-Ballston corridor within the Courthouse Metro Station area. The block is bounded by Wilson Boulevard to the north, Clarendon Boulevard to the south, North Barton Street to the east, and North Cleveland Street to the west. The block comprises apparently 1.42 acres and is currently occupied by a 5-story office building. The block is bordered by low-scale retail to the north, residential development to the south, retail parking and a temporary public space to the east, and then the Courthouse West General Land Use Plan study was just concluded for the block to the west. This is an excerpt from the General Land Use Plan, or SGLUP. Subject block is designated low office apartment hotel. The north along Wilson Boulevard is service commercial development bordering the Lion Village neighborhood. To the south is high residential. The east is high medium mixed use. And to the west is currently service commercial, although the county board authorized the advertisement of medium office apartment hotel for this site in September of 2022. Subject block is currently zoned CO 1.5, which corresponds to the current low office apartment hotel club category. The properties to the north are designated C2, keeping with their service commercial club designation. Properties to the south are designated RA 4.8. And the properties to the east and west are designated C2, although again, coming out of the Courthouse West Special SGLUP study, the property to the west is recommended for CO 2.5. The application that was submitted to amend the general land use plan is from low office apartment hotel to one of two different categories. One of those categories is high office apartment hotel, which corresponds with the CO mixed use district. So CO allows for up to 3-point FAR for office use and up to 4.8 FAR for residential and 3.8 FAR for hotel, and heights from 153 to 180 feet, depending on the use. The other general land use plan category that's was requested is medium office apartment hotel, which corresponds with CO 2.5. CO 2.5, you can see here, allows for up to 2.5 FAR for office development, and FAR stands for floor area ratio, up to 115 units per acre for residential development, and up to 180 units per acre for hotel development. Heights range from 12 to 16 stories, depending on the use. The applicant is requesting the SGLUP amendment to high office apartment hotel or medium office apartment hotel because the 1993 Courthouse Sector Plan addendum calls for higher density commercial residential mixed use, but it does not specify a specific SGLUP or zoning category. This would allow the applicant to develop up to and up to 16 stories if we were to go under CO2 point. And now I'll turn it over to Oliver for the.
Great. Well, thank you everyone for being here and taking the time to speak about this project with us. We appreciate it. The site we all know well. It's the lower density 5-story office building across the street from Buck Realty block, Pearls, close to Good Food. To the north, to the south, there's the residential really gets started right along this block. On the southern portion of the block, demonstrated shown in the bottom right photo, is the public open space right now, which I would call pretty non-functional. It has a path through some green space. That's part of the features that with this application, with the future 4.1, we think we can improve upon dramatically, create a significant and impressive open space for the area. No, Margaret just hit on this, but the subject site is low office apartment hotel. There is actually a little bit of available density on the block as is. We don't want to build that out right now. It doesn't really make sense to do so. I would like to touch on TMG as a larger organization owns several office buildings in the market, and I think everyone knows well office is very challenged right now, and we believe that this is a great opportunity to take a site offline and change it to a residential use that will be a productive use for the entire community. We'll bring more retail on the ground floor. We'll bring more functional, productive open space and continue to contribute to the ecosystem that is the RP corridor that I think everyone in this room, we're all sitting here. We want to see it be successful. Sure. And I'll look up too. Sure. Sorry about that. We'll talk a little bit louder. As Margaret mentioned, the block next door, the Courthouse West block, was recently recommended for CO 2.5. Initially, our block was recommended for CO. After several discussions with community members, staff, planning commissioners, we believe we can achieve the goals that we originally set out to achieve with the CO 2.5 designation. Some of those, just to list a few out, are sustainable biophilic elements. That is a priority not only for our organization, just from an ESG standpoint, but also for this project. From a range of unit sizes due to the unit constraint with the CO 2.5 designation, we believe that will result in some larger floor plans, 3-4 bedroom units, which are not commonly available throughout the submarket. And we believe that the retail and open space again, and just general streetscape will greatly be improved beyond the current condition. We do think that given the bullseye approach, which I know has been spoken about ad nauseum, for the GLUP study adjacent to this one, we believe that this block, it's logical to take a slight step up from, I believe the height cap is 14 stories on the Courthouse West block, the recommended height cap, going up to 16, which is the maximum in the CO 2.5 designation as we get closer to the metro. So we believe that all of these features of CO 2.5 will still allow us to have a successful project. We believe that CO had the similar characteristics to allow us to achieve that, but we do think that we'll be able to still provide an impactful project for the community. from a height standpoint and massing standpoint, as you know, I'm sure height will be a point of discussion, whether it's today or during a 4.1 process, and we welcome it. We think it's important, and we're not ignoring it. And pushing that density and massing around on the site to make it the least impactful for lower density structures nearby, but most impactful from a pedestrian experience. And by that, I mean, if we're able to pull the building up a little bit more, we can potentially push it back on the street and create more open space at the ground level, greater pedestrian retail interaction, and again, continue to build out the connectivity between Courthouse and Clarendon, which is in this location specifically, dies a little bit. So 16 stories will allow us to continue to achieve those, in a more significant way than a lower height cap would. And again, this slide is intended to just demonstrate the optionality that we will consider and have, I'm sure, extensive discussions with the community, civic associations, and with staff as this overall process continues, and we look forward to it. We think it's an important part of designing a good project. Again, just from a location standpoint, short walk to the metro, really in both directions. But being in Courthouse, we showed it just proximity to the metro, under a 5-minute walk to where you can actually get into that metro entrance, and much higher density, density designations than what we are CO 2.5 that we ultimately think is appropriate here. So that's all I have prepared. Just wanted to hit on a few items that we were thinking of. Welcome questions, later on during the discussion, and happy to answer, address any concerns.
Thank you very much. Steph, anything further to add?
Yes, we do. Okay, now we will move on to the staff analysis and the special GLUP study evaluation. So we have the process guide criteria, and some of the questions that we asked as part of our review revolve around various topics. So one is support for county goals. Would the amendment possibly advance a broader county goal? In terms of existing planning guidance, is there already an existing adopted plan for this area that provides guidance? Changing conditions. What conditions have changed to warrant revisiting the adopted policy? Relevant ongoing processes. In this instance, we do not have any. Surrounding context. Is this a larger or more complex site? Are the surrounding properties similar? Should they potentially be included in the study? And then PDSP applicability, which is phase development site plan, and that's not applicable. And then in terms of our existing policy guidance, of course, we have the general land use plan, and in the general land use plan booklet, we have our development and growth goals, which provide some guidance. They call for concentrating high density residential, commercial, and office development within our metro station areas, promoting mixed use development, again, in the metro station areas, increasing the supply of housing by encouraging construction of a variety of housing types and prices at a range of heights and densities in and near metro station areas. It also calls for preserving and enhancing our existing single-family and apartment neighborhoods and our neighborhood retail areas. I'm going to turn it over to Tim now to continue the evaluation.
Thanks, Margaret. The next set of slides review existing plan guidance for the 2500 Wilson Boulevard block, as well as the adjacent area. So going back first, in 1981, County Board adopted the courthouse sector plan, which planned for a ring of development around the courthouse metro station, as well as a government center. So this particular plan identified the 2500 Wilson Boulevard block outlined in blue on this map as a commercial area west of an area designated or identified for high density residential development. Next slide. In 1984, the County Board approved a GLUP amendment rezoning and site plan for the 2500 Wilson Boulevard block. So the GLUP amendment back then changed the designation to low office apartment hotel. The site plan resulted in the 5-story office building that exists on the block today. This development precedes the adoption of the courthouse sector plan addendum. It was adopted in 1993, 12 years later after the courthouse sector plan. The addendum provided updated planning guidance for this block and identified the location within a larger area that's identified for higher density commercial residential mixed use development. The addendum includes little explanatory text regarding this designation and did not recommend or identify a specific GLUP amendment or GLUP designation or designations that would fit within that higher density commercial residential mixed use classification. So it's important to note that the block is adjacent to an area that's identified for service commercial development on the north side of Wilson Boulevard, and then further north, a transition area. So they, go back one slide. The addendum also contains general urban design guidance about building height transitions within the courthouse area, signaling that heights should taper down from the core area to the lower density residential areas. Next slide. We also note in our examination that there's a Clarendon Courthouse neighborhood plan that was last updated in 2007. And it's important to note that neighborhood plans are prepared by community members and are developed to capture the community members' vision and ideas and to recommend potential improvement. This slide shown here highlights excerpts from that document that speak to a desired vision for the neighborhood. Next slide. More recently, the Courthouse West Special GLUP study concluded in September 2022 and developed guiding principles and recommendations to guide future development of the block immediately to the west of the 2500 Wilson Boulevard block. Study document that was adopted by the County Board recommended a GLUP designation of medium office apartment hotel, as Margaret has noted, and includes guidance for maximum building heights of up to 14 stories in the center of the block, building heights tapering down to 4 to 6 stories at the edges of the block. 4 stories identified for Wilson Boulevard and Clarendon Boulevard frontages, and for the massing adjacent to a planned public space on the block. The study document contains recommendations that provide for a new public space or envision a new public space, as well as affordable housing and transportation improvements, among others, to improve access and safety. The study document notes that medium office apartment hotel could serve as a starting point for a future study or development review process for the 2500 Wilson Boulevard block. Next slide. The map shown here illustrates the approximate existing building heights around the area. When considering these heights, see that much of the development that has existed since back before the courthouse sector plan in 1981 is lower scale commercial development of approximately 1 to 3 stories. I think best You can find that on the north side of Wilson Boulevard. More recent development consists of taller developments. So when looking at existing building heights, it's important to note that the blocks to the west of the courthouse west block, denoted on this slide with a blue star, fall within the Clarendon sector plan area. And that plan provides land use and building height guidance. 2500 Wilson Boulevard block and other areas to the east toward Courthouse Metro Station fall within the boundaries of the courthouse sector plan and plan addendum. That these documents do not provide detailed planning or detailed building height guidance. Next slide. Finally, this slide looks at building height guidance that exists today for the 2500 Wilson Boulevard block, the surrounding area and courthouse. So what this map does, it identifies the general land use plan designations and then the maximum height that would be allowed in the zoning districts that are found with each designation. Within the area, the existing guidance generally envisions building heights decreasing as you move away from the courthouse metro station. And we see heights of up to 180 feet closer to the station. And just to reiterate, the Courthouse West study resulted in building height guidance of up to 14 stories for the block to the west of the 2500. Now I'll pass it back to Margaret to conclude the presentation.
So in terms of our staff analysis, looking back at those questions for discussion that we already identified, in terms of support for county goals, as we saw, the general land use plan calls for high density development along our metro corridors. In addition, our affordable housing master plan recognizes the need for additional housing as well as additional affordable housing. In terms of the existing planning guidance, the courthouse sector plan and the courthouse sector plan addendum provide some limited guidance, with the addendum calling for higher density commercial residential mixed use without a specific buffer zoning category associated with that. In terms of the most recent guidance, as Tim mentioned, we have the 2022 Courthouse West Special GLUP study document, which provides various recommendations, including noting that medium office apartment hotel is a potential starting point creation for this subject site. And that, adjacent site, as we saw for the Courthouse West, allows for building heights up to. And again, there are no relevant ongoing planning processes at this moment, and there's no PDSP associated. Now we'll move on to our recommendations. So we have two different recommendations. The first option is a streamlined review through the site plan review committee process. This site is located, as we've seen, in an area with limited sector plan guidance. However, the recently completed Courthouse West Special GLUP study does provide guidance for the adjacent block and can be used as a starting point for evaluating the requested amendment for this block. Given this recent guidance, the requested amendment could be evaluated through the SPRC process. As we said before, the Courthouse West Special GLUP study document notes medium office apartment hotel as a possible starting point for consideration for this subject block. High medium residential mixed use, which is also the designation of the lot to the east, could also potentially be considered. And then in terms of the proposed building height, density, transitions, etc., all those could be evaluated and discussed in detail during the SPRC process. The second option that we are recommending is evaluation as part of a broader metro station area or metro corridor analysis. Proposed land use amendment to the site could also be evaluated through a broader study that would look not just at this site, but at other nearby sites within the Roslyn-Ballston corridor. A study looking at building height and density around the metro station areas or along our corridors could be a potential recommendation also coming out of the upcoming work that we'll be doing, looking at the comprehensive plans, overarching goals and objectives, something that we'll be beginning work on shortly. This option would be particularly appropriate if the applicant was to pursue the high office apartment hotel designation for this site, as we believe that that level of density would require additional study. And such a study, to be noted, of course, would need to fit into our adopted work plan for timing purposes. Here are open zoning designations that we've discussed. And then we would like to ask if there are any clarifying questions that anyone has. And then we would like to hear your feedback on the proposed process options. First, the streamlined review through the SPRC process. And then second, the evaluation as part of a broader metro station area or corridor analysis. This concludes staff's presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. So it is now open for discussion at the table, at the virtual table. And as said, first we'll do clarifying questions. So we go around. If anybody has any for either staff or the applicant, now's the time to ask questions. Anybody virtual, raise your hand if you have questions. Anyway, table's open. Commissioner Schroll first.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Rhodes, I'm wondering, in your slide 34, slide preceding this one, you reference, no, sorry, it's, I think it's your slide 36. Apologies. There you go. You have RC listed there, but it's not referenced elsewhere in the in your presentation, and it's not requested by the applicant. I'm wondering if you could speak to staff's thinking about RC.
Yeah, we were thinking that it's the designation for the site to the east, and it could potentially be appropriate here. You know, as you can see, RC allows for up to 3.24 FAR and up to 95 feet. So that's another designation that could potentially be considered. It is not the one requested by the applicant. It's not the one recommended coming out of the Courthouse West study document as a point of departure for examining this site. But it's another potential option.
And then 95 feet, isn't that inclusive of the penthouse? RC?
I believe that's correct, yes.
All right, that's helpful. Thank you, Mr.
Ms. Okura, you're next.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, I have actually questions for both of you, but my first question is for the applicant. I would like to find out if is the high office apartment hotel off the table, that request, or are you having both simultaneously?
Based on the staff's work and really everyone in this room worked on Courthouse West proposal, we think it gives great justification and reasoning for CO 2.5, and in discussions as we saw that process unfold, we think that CO 2.5 will achieve our goal. And so going to the CO route, and we may not achieve much more is ultimately what we're concluding, and potentially requiring significant resources at people in this room, collectively, yours included. We don't want to waste time. And we think the work that was done is great work.
And why do you prefer one versus the other from the medium and the high medium? What's the reasoning behind?
Do you mean medium and high? Sorry.
Sorry, it's both. Okay, with that chart that
Medium versus high, medium, RC.
Exactly.
So RC, we think that RC provides challenges due to that height cap, 95 feet. You just from a massing standpoint, you end up with a short, squatty building. You can cram a lot of units in there, but it's going to be a very blocky building potentially. As I was mentioning before during my segment, we believe getting a little taller to allow open space and an impactful open space is important, and going a little more vertical helps achieve that in a significant way.
So I would like to ask Ms. Rhodes, with that with those different designations, what's the maximum bonus density that they can get, including what I think is the starting point, which is what they have right now? Like how much bonus density they get on.
So for the various zoning categories that we're looking at, let's focus on CO 2.5. They could get additional bonus density in return, in exchange for community benefits such as affordable housing, green building provisions, a community space, that sort of thing. That bonus density, though, would still be capped by the height in the zoning ordinance, because there's no greater height permitted in the relevant sector plan. The sector plans for courthouse actually don't specify any specific numerical height limits. So it would be capped by the heights in the zoning ordinance that you see here. So it could not go over, say, the 16 stories for residential.
Okay, so the 16 stories would still be the max, the 95 feet for the RC, and then the 10 stories for the low. So it can't like reach 22. Thank you. You're welcome.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Oh, actually, we have other members who's joined.
I didn't check her
Sorry,
question.
could you introduce yourself?
Oh, Elizabeth. What's the current average height for us for a floor? Given that we're talking 16 stories, so there's 10 feet, 8 feet
Yeah, I think
for community members who I think seem concerned about the height.
we would, and I think most people who would be planning this block would assume a retail floor on the ground floor, which is anywhere from 15 to 25 stories. Sorry. Yeah, sorry. Scratch that from the record. 18, yeah, 15 to 25 feet, and then above that, it's about 10 per residential story, the penthouse. Maybe
We say penthouse, by the way, that doesn't mean the luxury unit.
the can penthouse, correct.
Purchases, that's the max. 23 feet is a.
We have another member who joined us, Commissioner Steinberger, do you want to introduce yourself?
That's pretty much it. Hi, Sarah. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
No clarifying questions at the moment.
Yeah, Commissioner Schroll.
Ms. Rhodes, on your kind of first staff recommendations, process, option. Given what the applicant is saying at the table that they are fine with medium OAH, would then that be staff's recommendation here, that that would be the one that would go to LRPC and not both? Or would
I don't
still
know that we need
both?
to necessarily opine on which zoning ordinance, GLUP category would necessarily be appropriate, but I think, given the guidance of the courthouse west special GLUP study, probably medium office would be direction would be.
Okay. Were you considering at any point that it would be an open question to SPRC about the GLUP category initially, and that would precede other conversations? So maybe like a mini LRPC, SPRC discussion, like we've had with other block plans and other things. Is that sort of the kind of direction that staff was thinking it might go, or something else?
I mean, I think that if they're, given the courthouse west guidance and applicants' interest in that category, I think it would make sense to move forward if there's interest in the LRPC in advancing it. But that's something that could be a topic.
And I just wanted to note one follow-up on that. I mean, I think our hope would be, in this process, option one, that a lot of those questions related to LRPC review would have been largely answered in the Courthouse West study. Obviously, there are some differences. It's a different site, and we need to explore those. But I do think that the extensive review that the SPRC process provides probably gives ample opportunities to explore any of those questions without necessarily requiring a separate process.
Yeah, I mean, that's helpful. I mean, I think that the SPRC, you're thinking about whether or not the SGLUP category is, related to or consistent with other planning guidance, right? And you're kind of answering different questions. Outside of like kind of more theoretical, is it appropriate? Which is what so, I mean, but understanding. All right.
So the thing is that the Courthouse West process is that it was limited to Courthouse West. And I didn't actually find the quotes in the study, but from what you've quoted, it says could start or potentially start. So that doesn't mean we've adopted that. It's just that it could. Really, the starting point is where we are now. The other thing is that the Courthouse West, when it was before the Planning Commission, there was some misinformation, which was about a potential metro entrance, which the county board chairman refuted. But it was after the PD voted on that, and those of us who were in the audience and who knew the answer didn't have an opportunity to say, hello, we've been living around here for 30 years, and no, it's not in any CIP. So there was some misinformation that some of members of our community feel that it wasn't necessarily voted on with the right information, that way. So that's one concern. The second concern I have is about notice to the public. So when the House West plan was happening, it was dealing with that. It was a survey regarding that property. It wasn't about the one next door. 4 different civic associations united in trying to have it 6 stories or lower. So we know that there is public sentiment. There are some people who would also away, but there is a significant public sentiment. So I just want us to be aware of these things, but it's not like Courthouse West is standard because there are some issues.
I just want to address your first point on the incorrect information. That's absolutely right. That was incorrect. We did make a mistake in presenting that. So number one, want to be upfront about our making a mistake there. Number two, thank you for bringing it up. We did, once we realized we'd made the mistake, we did clarify it to the PC and to the board afterward. And I sent a separate email to the board explaining to them that this was not the correct information. So we got to get it right. I get that, but I also wanted you to know that we did correct that.
Thank you, but it was after the.
Sure,
vote,
no,
so- Yeah, and I saw it again in your letter for this one, so that's why I was
Sure.
concerned.
Sure.
But thank you for your
Of course.
honesty.
And to let you know, references on page 9. No, I know, yeah, it's good, but that's what this happens.
Yeah, I have a clarifying question. You have 2 options that are being presented. Are those options mutually exclusive? Or is it possible to move ahead with an SPRC for this and nonetheless move ahead for a larger study up and down the corridor?
Yes, that's certainly a recommendation that the LRPC could make. We're going to be initiating a larger process to look at our comprehensive plan and our comprehensive plan goals, objectives, vision, et cetera. So that is an opportunity for us to look bigger at things more broadly. But yeah, absolutely, that could be something that LRPC.
Thank you. Oh, first, Commissioner Steinberg, then Commissioner Schwab. Okay.
Following.
Sit up here, I can't see you.
Commissioner Geary can go first. Evan, I just wanted to follow up on this. Thank you for raising this thing, Mr. Chair. Ms. Rhodes, I understand that if we did a longer study, this would have to be accommodated in. What does the timing for something like that look like? Is that something that you all think you could accommodate in the next 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, 2 years?
I don't think we have that information with us tonight. But I think, you know, certainly an option that maybe Jan was referring to is that this particular application could be reviewed through SPRC, and then through the comprehensive plan exploration, we could also recommend and or begin a Roslyn Ballston corridor study or something.
Yeah,
of
that was
nature
what I
to
was
get.
questioning. How long, when you think that might start, knowing how much development is still occurring in the county?
That would not be starting immediately.
Yes.
Commissioner Steinberger.
That was more or less what I was going to get at my question. I don't know that I would have phrased it quite the same way, but my consideration would be, it doesn't sound like we need to hold up this in order to, if we wanted to pursue that Ballston-Roslyn corridor study, we don't need to hold up this opportunity to do that. We could say both things. But I do think we're seeing recurring conversations about what needs, you know, what's happening close to our metro sites and, you know, basing a lot of decisions, considering basing a lot of decisions off of proximity to metro, whether it's for parking, whether it's for height of buildings, what have you. And so I do think there's a broader conversation that needs to take place there. And that doesn't mean that other development shouldn't be able to move forward. Or I don't perceive that it means other development shouldn't be able to proceed. That's my view. I don't want to speak for everyone. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Schwab.
Yeah, I would concur with my colleagues. I like this hybrid approach, and I was considering earlier this evening, so I'm glad you brought it up, Mr. Chairman. And or with Commissioner Steinberger that given the extensive work that was done on the adjacent parcel, I don't see why that could be used this applicant, but I would be supportive of a much broader study than just an update to the courthouse addendum. As I've been saying to staff, for 7.5 years on the commission, there's other county planning sector plans that are woefully outdated. And so it should be, if county's going to put it in the work plan, let's think about doing more than just on the courthouse.
As Commissioner Schwab noted, original courthouse study is now 42 years old, and the addendum is 30 years. High time. Needs to be looked at again. I have a question, because this will be changing the use from office to residential. Having looked at there's the policy document that the county reviews when there is that change from office to residential. Has that been considered as part of this? Or is that really SPRC?
That would be something we'd want to look at through SPRC. And one of the other things to think about is also in terms of if there was to be a general land use plan amendment for this area, that would bring into play that affordable housing contribution that's required when we do a general land use plan amendment. So there would certainly be 20% or more above the GLUP in terms of affordable housing that would be expected to be generated for this.
And I'd just piggyback to say that in the CO 2.5 scenario, we haven't yet changed the use. That would be, as
Right.
Mr. Red said, at the site plan, we propose office.
Residential use.
Right, and then just to also clarify, Frederick is correct that, you know, we're just discussing at this level the general land use plan categories. We're not necessarily opining on whether office, apartment, or hotel would be most appropriate. Their application is for residential, but, you
It
know,
could be anything.
it could be any of the
And we have to
three.
consider that as being anything, because at this level, especially for a tier 1,
Yes,
we're not specifying anything.
Absolutely.
It's whatever could happen, they could sell the land tomorrow, we have a different application.
exactly.
Yes.
I actually have a question for the applicant. Did you guys consider converting the building at all into other uses? I'm very concerned about the carbon footprint of taking down such a young building. relatively speaking, in age, building ages. 84 is not that old. But so I was wondering if you.
We have, and it's going to be something that we consider in a further design process. We need to do more studies on that item. But there's also parking below it. Why throw that away if we can use that? You know, we're aligned on that. Don't waste something that you can reuse. But we do need to further those studies and, you know, items. Again, I keep bringing up the green space, but items like the green space and where that's located could then impact how we reuse the overall block, but it will be studied.
So what you're considering doing, if I'm understanding this correctly, is maintaining that building, converting it from the interior and adding to it on the outside or in front of. Or
these are items that we will study during a future design process. Right now, it's conceptual, and our concepts are agnostic to whether or not we keep the building. Some could keep the building, some wouldn't be able to, just depending on how it's massed. So that will be, I'm sure, extensively discussed during an SPRC process.
you haven't considered just converting it at this point without any addition.
Oh, just changing the use. We have tenants in there now. It would not be it wouldn't be something that would make sense. And we would need to go through a site plan amendment for that, but we wouldn't need to be here in the discussion in order to do that, since it's the OAH designation, right?
Okay, any other questions? Open to discussion, or I guess we've been doing that too. So any comments from the board?
Thank you. I'd love to hear more about your biophilic vision, since you referenced it.
Sure. So, you know, TMG overall, we have a strong commitment to ESG and making sure that our projects are following those sort of efforts. And so, you know, again, it's something we're going to study how we implement that, but levels of sustainability in a lot of ways, and, you know, going beyond just sustainability, but wellness as well. And, you know, I'd kind of roll biophilic up into a wellness category. We think those combined are really important for a successful project, and it would be something we want to bring to light in this project. I don't have more specificity yet because we're not there, but it's something that we're gonna.
I'm happy to hear that. As we add density, and we know we're adding it, especially in our metro corridors. Those are for households, especially residential, that don't have backyards. And we've done enough study that we know that everybody benefits from this regular access to nature. So adding things that are not just for your residents, but that contribute to accessible open space for the folks living there, and then the folks who are already in the community. And it would be lovely to see you guys sort of set an example for what future development.
And just on that point, you know, we view the customers of our projects, not just the people living there. You know, they're the people walking by, driving by.
Yeah.
They're the retailers that might be next door. You know, everyone in this room. So, you know, we understand that the building impacts everyone to different degrees and in different ways. And so ensuring that it is impactful in those ways to everyone is a focus.
Do you have examples of all the projects done in the area here?
So our signature project is the Borough out in Tyson's. That's a multi-phase mixed-use project, movie theater, residential, office. We are about 2.5 phases through about 8. And that's probably the best representative project for, you know, how we think about things, how we focus on placemaking. It's been a very large success from a placemaking standpoint and creating a community there. And really, you know, the way we went about that development and the initial phasing, delivering an immediately full retail, two-sided retail strip, even though it wasn't economical, to create a little area that is comfortable to come into. That led to Whole Foods actually coming in the block. That project has been successful. We'll definitely leverage those successes and lessons learned into.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Question for staff about your, if we kind of move forward with option one, move to SPRC, by what is SPRC measuring the applicant's proposal against? We would normally have a study document. Are you going to be producing one? Or are we going to be measuring it against the height and form that is in the Courthouse West? What is SPRC using as a guide?
So we would be using the guidance from the Courthouse West study, which had already noted that it's a point of departure for this study. So I think that would be our starting place. And then, if there's any additional guidance, in any of the courthouse sector plans, that would be relevant. But that would be the point of departure.
So then would you say that the same transitions apply, the same height? So it's 14 stories, it's the step down to 4. Is it like those kinds of limiting factors?
So that would be exactly what would be
Okay.
on the table for discussion at SPRC. I don't think we need to determine the height maximums or anything at this juncture. I think that's all for discussion at SPRC. We have the zoning ordinance would allow, or
Up to
CO 2.4 up to 16. Then we have the guidance of the Courthouse West study document. So I think that there's room for discussion. Of course, we would want LRPC input, community input, et cetera.
Can I ask why staff isn't just recommending the same guidance since it's the adjacent block? Like, why isn't staff recommending essentially the same thing for a block that's literally next door?
I think that's something that, would have required maybe further analysis. I think that we can use this guidance from Courthouse West project and apply it to the site. But I don't think we need to say it needs to look exactly like that block. I think that, it's a slightly different context. And so I think it's appropriate to look at that block and if it was to advance to SPRC, to look at the application and get input from all the SPRC members, community, et cetera.
All right, last question, Mr. Chairman. That's a slightly different issue. Is staff aware of any other special GLUP studies in this part of the county, or in planned areas, I guess?
You mean in the
Actually-
Roslyn Ballston corridor?
Or, in the Blue Line corridor as well?
So in the Blue Line corridor, Bristol City, there's a pending, I guess it's already gone through the tier 1 process, waiting for a tier 2. That's the Southeast Street residential club study. My knowledge, I don't think that there are any other pending tier 1 studies or tier 2 studies within a planned area,
Okay.
i.e. a metro station area.
All right, that's helpful.
Did we have LRPCs for sure?
We had a special GLUP study plus that Commissioner Buren,
Right, I thought so.
well,
Because that is a plan there.
I was thinking of pending one.
And they all pending.
Pending, yes, pending.
Have this occur and then.
The built back property behind it is not coming up.
I haven't heard anything about that property right now.
The whole area behind the Courthouse West and 2500 Wilson Boulevard is owned by one owner, one property, which is between that and Lions Village.
That's what
So,
you're
and they
talking
supported, they sent in a letter and they appeared West. So, I wasn't sure if they were, I don't want us to be at the end of this one, like the last one, and then it suddenly pops up, so. Yeah. So, and then the other thing I wanted to, actually, both of you brought points that I wanted to ask about. The Courthouse West along Clarendon Boulevard, the county envisions a public space. And then right now, there is another public space with green grass. And even though it's not really inviting to the public or the public cannot use really, it does provide grass, which helps with our climate and visually, it's actually one of the more pleasant walks. So, you know, we do get to see an art sculpture and there is green grass, right? So there is an open space that which is, I think, of a public benefit. And then after that, there is a triangular piece, which I think the Korean embassy has lent to the county. So ideally, it would be lovely to have a pedestrian open public space that goes along, because, you know, with tapering off with that Korean embassy thing, because it's there and it would make it feel even bigger than it is, because it would cover the expanse of 2 blocks, right? So that is something that I want to throw out there. The other thing is from an equity lens, anyone who wants to live there will also want to have, and we have, I will tell you, I lived in this neighborhood for 30+ years, and our parks are overcrowded. Our green space is very limited. And this is one more green space that we right now have. And so I want that to be part of your equation. The diagrams, you talked a lot about open space, but then when you showed us the pictures, they didn't look like there was much open space. So I was like, okay, what are we talking about here? You know, a little corner between 3 big buildings is not gonna really give us that space. So that equity lens and that about, you know, the open spaces, that is such an important thing. And the way we can maximize it is actually to cooperate with the block next door and try to give it that bigger feel. So that
We're in agreement with that, and you know, we will be coordinating with you.
because, yeah, the other thing I wanted to, that's another important point, which is if we are, and you decide, I mean, we can't force you to do anything, and no, not the county, no, but if you decide to bring down that building, there is going to be carbon footprint there. And if we, as a county, one of our goals is zero carbon footprint, there's a lot of embodied energy in that building, in addition to all the stuff that's going to go in construction landfill. So we are going to have, you know, unlike Courthouse West, which is going to be just an improvement because, you know, we're dealing with black tarmac, right? Here, where we're actually going to have carbon footprint. So there is a cost, you know, to us and to our. But you all get the idea. Thank you. Yeah.
Just a question on timing, because as we were talking about sort of the logistics of the larger study and when that could realistically happen, in terms of moving forward with even in SPRC at this point, what are we looking at timing from both a county resources standpoint and from y'all's timeline? What is that looking like?
Well, certainly SPRC is not my shop, so I can commit them to do it right away. You know, it'll be dependent on the recommendation coming out of LRTC, and then when the plans, and then but then there is talk for that review for long range planning where it's a little bit independent.
So flipping back over to you guys, when do you think you would actually be putting together a package to be going to SPRC? I'm trying to figure out if this actually does maybe align with when a larger study might be taking place, because unless you've got files ready to go tomorrow, I just don't know.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, if we said go today, prepare the package, that it will take 2 to 3 months.
Okay. So it's not, okay.
Yeah, and it's not say a sector plan or, you know, broader study takes a year. Our goal would be to be in much sooner than that.
Mr. Harrier, you're recognized. You can go off mute.
Hey, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Yeah, I'm Jason Harrier from Lion Village. I just wanted to make one quick comment about option one and the increase in height from Courthouse West from the 14 to the 16. I just wanted to add just a little bit of context. Dima touched on it a little bit earlier, but the 14 height for Courthouse West really was the result of a very aspirational and bold move by the board. I think that the community surrounding Courthouse West was quite involved in that process for quite some time, and there's a lot more involvement in that process from the community than we have in this process. And I think that the four community associations surrounding it recommended 6 stories. I believe in that project, staff recommended 12. And when it went to the board, they wanted to be very bold and go all the way up to 14. And so I wanted to just level set that the 14 isn't a low number or something that we should start at. That was really an aspirational and bold goal from the board. And so I think that option one at 14 that matches Courthouse West does make some sense, but I'm not sure that anything more than 14 would. Thanks.
Thank you. I'd like to follow up both on Karen on green space, because I was actually going to note that myself. It wasn't until like a year or two ago that I realized it's actually public space, that it's not private. It just reads all wrong. So you're right that you can do better. And I think you're absolutely right that it's something that should be coordinated with other open space in the area. We would never design something like that today with just lawn with one piece of art in the middle. It would have to be much, because grass really isn't playable. It's nice and has some uses, but we would need much more in order to make it really viable. Fill in a little more on that, but you know, we've been looking at projects, as you, again, as Blair knows, that was one of the issues down in Crystal Pond. There was too much grass. It got cut back substantially in the final iteration. So when you are designing the open space, you'll definitely want to be working with it so that it ends up being a true biophilia experience rather than just plop some grass here, which ends up being a dog run, especially in a residential building. So, but that's SBR solution. So I don't know. Really.
I'd like to thank you for that. And not to make more work for you, but in a perfect world, we would ask you to look at how your planned open space would fit with the rest of the community. And you have a little path that connects to another park, because there really is not enough open space for a resident based on our own adopted spaces master. So I think while that sounds like an extra step, it behooves everyone in the long run, makes your building competitive and much more fun.
I'll just quickly address, we agree. I mean, it's an advantage to have connectivity to the adjacent green spaces. So there's not really a disadvantage to that, so.
And you will have lots of help in the community.
It's gonna be the healthiest block. Yeah.
Commissioner Sarli.
I'm going a little bit on a different direction, although this conversation and brings up a little bit, and I'm probably echoing Commissioner Schroll more than anything else, but a little bit struggling a little bit with this site relative to Courthouse West, this notion of special club. And at some point, it becomes so many independent points that it's hard to anchor this on sort of a greater context, you know? I think Courthouse West was fine as a process, but it was a special process, right? And now right next to it, we're having another special process. So like at what point do we touch back to base, you know, and say, okay, here's the plan that we're all springing off of. So I'm having a little bit of a hard time sort of, you know, engaging in the conversation because of that. It's like trying to reference back to a larger plan. And that's why I particularly like proposal 2, because of that, you know, that larger context and how this fits into the whole. And I'm uncomfortable tying this too closely to Courthouse West because of that. You know, Courthouse West was a one-off. Now there's a 2-off. You get my point. So that's where I'm at. But I think otherwise, you know, I think I think there's a parking garage right under the grass.
Yeah.
So I think that's why it's elevated, and this goes back to our last soak when we don't call balls or enemy of the good, right? So I think that's, we're all feeling with that grassy knoll and the fall.
We have other comments, discussion. Okay, first Parks and Rec, and then
Thank you. Yeah, I've been largely silent because everyone kind of beat me to it, but I, associate myself with all of the comments that other commissioners have offered on, the value of open space in this corridor, especially at this parcel as it's situated between two, one existing and one, confirmed pending open space to the west as well. So this will be really critical in kind of tying courthouse to Clarendon as people move from one area to the other. I live catty corner to this parcel, so I know it very well and walk that block all the time. And I think all of these comments about the value of open space really speak to the merit of pursuing option one in the short term. Because yeah, the grass is nice, but it's strictly aesthetic for 99% of the community, and a better open space that's more integrated with the pedestrian experience as well as the surrounding parcels would provide a lot more value to the community. And I really think, we shouldn't sacrifice that, because I think the vision you've laid out and talked about today lays out pretty clearly your values and your intent on kind of creating that coordination that we would like to see. And I think we can do that through an SPRC process. I would like to say also, though, that the second option, I think associating with Commissioners Steinberger and Schroll, also pursuing the second option of a broader corridor study makes a lot of sense, because we're kind of having the same conversation tonight that we had through the Courthouse West Special Club. And it, reasons that we're going to keep having this conversation. So, and throughout the county as well, continuing that conversation on, how our metro corridors are evolving through the 21st century, and how land use in the corridors is evolving as well, and the cascading impacts on open space and transportation and other amenities definitely needs to be considered.
I wanted to mention something that we mentioned at the time of Courthouse West, and this area, if we're also looking at the equity lens, all along the Orange Corridor, have no community recreational facilities, no community centers, use of pool or indoor pickleball courts, or what you name it. We have nothing. We have a huge percentage of our county. And I want Courthouse West developers, I want you guys all to consider that building within your development, offer some sort of benefit of, sports or access to the swimming pool or what have you. But it's something I wanted early on to introduce the concept, and for county staff to be aware that from an equity perspective, we need something along the Orange Line that caters to people, whatever development suitable, but I also want developers to also, in addition, of course, to afford. I know that that's on the agenda anyways. Thing I wanted to stress. The other thing I wanted to ask, actually, Ms. Rhodes, is if we have like an abbreviated special GLUP versus like just skipping the special GLUP here too, would that make more sense than just jumping into SPRC?
I think that in this case, given that Tim spent, I don't know how many months working on the adjacent site and looking at the broader area in the context, and that plan offers guidance for this site that can be applied here, and the same characteristics. I don't know that it's necessary to take an additional 3 to 6 months to do a special general land use plan study process. One thing we've been hearing from the planning commissioners is a desire to be more streamlined in our special general land use plan studies. So I think this is one way, and in this special GLUP study process criteria says that other study avenues are appropriate. So it could be SPRC, it could be, a small area plan, it could be a PDSP review. So it's not necessarily that we need to always go from tier 1 to tier 2. I think that the SPRC can look at a lot of these questions. It sounds like the questions that we're hearing are about where should the open space be located? What should it look like? Tapering.
So I
What's
have
the
an
right height?
alternative suggestion of actually, like prior to the actual SPRC, if applicants can actually survey our community, work with us, or actually try to get like a more structured feedback. And I'll tell you, I worked extensively on what were market comment or environment crossings now. And I was at the table with the architect, and we were able to make suggestions that made it such a successful development, and our ability to be on the table with them and sharing our ideas. I remember the architect jumping up in excitement. Yeah, that's a good suggestion. Yes, we can do that. Yes, we can get an alley to the neighborhood so it's not like a strip mall. It really makes a difference when the community who are living there can actually tell you what really works, what they really need. And it really would just be to your success and not just help with something. We want you to be successful.
We will absolutely be talking to you all prior to the SBRC submission. So we think it's just.
But like while in the design process, as
Correct.
opposed to, oh, here it is. Yeah, you can maybe change the garage entrance, but I mean, I would.
Yeah. No, we think your input is collective community input is critical. And we will be setting up meetings, multiple likely throughout, with frequency throughout the entire process, including.
Look forward to it.
Thank you. Do we have any other comments? Okay, I'll go around the table once for everybody to give everybody a chance to say something, both table and virtually. Commissioner Gear, do you have any final comments you'd like to make?
No, thank you.
Commissioner
Yeah,
Sutton?
I think thanks staff for the presentation, and thanks to the applicant for the presentation. I think there's a lot of potential in the site. I encourage.
Commissioner Steinberg?
Nope, I think no additional real feedback. I do support doing a hybrid approach, and probably pursuing the SPRC and then the larger study at the same time.
Commissioner Fairland?
I also support the hybrid approach.
Commissioner Schwab?
Nothing to add to that. Haven't already said.
Okay. Ms. Kerr?
Yeah, I was wondering if we were going to have heard what people are going to be for voting.
We're not voting.
Okay.
There's no votes.
Okay.
No votes.
Okay.
Yeah, and we will have public comment.
Okay. But I was wondering if that was going to serve as part of the.
Yeah, there's
Okay.
no vote.
Yeah, I mean, I think, from everything that I've heard, that with the option 1. We want it to be successful, but let's do it.
Thank you. Mr. Harrier?
Nothing else for me. Thanks a lot for the presentations and the discussion and all the thoughtful questions. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. We can now move on to public comments, and we do have some public commenters. Be able to give 2 minutes per person. Put up on the screen, so we're going to be doing it first. We will go to our virtual members.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
I can't read that from here, so you said you're saying to do.
Can you hear me?
No, we cannot. You're gonna have to speak louder, Ms. Bodine.
Can you hear me now?
A little bit louder, getting better, but louder.
Okay, pardon me if I'm not meaning to yell, but I'll try to speak as loud as possible. Okay.
It doesn't sound like you're yelling to us at all, so go ahead.
Okay, thank you. My name's Ann Bodine. I'm from Lion Park, and I'm slightly concerned we seem to be repeating Courthouse West, where the county leapfrogged whole categories of land use density, going from a 2-story zone parcel to 14. This upzoning isn't quite as big a difference from existing to proposed zoning, but it's also not an excuse to just cave on bad precedent. Sorry. I've testified against density so many times, but let's see if a new tactic gains any traction. I have 4 animal stories to share tonight. First, I wish you all a happy year of the rabbit. Number 2, lobsters. The county sees residents as those lobsters in the pot, happily frolicking while you turn up the heat with tricky land use tools like the streamlined SPRC, only ever used 3 times. Which of us lobsters even understands such a concept? And when we finally feel the heat, it is too late. Too late to accommodate community desires staff-sided, such as human scale buildings, parks and plazas, older buildings, open space, locally owned businesses, and tapering. You'll mention them, but they won't happen, and we lobsters will be cooked all the same. Number 3, camels. You are citing Courthouse West as the camel's nose under the tent. That's where the board ignored a request from 4 civic associations to limit new height at 6 stories and approve 14. As I mentioned, these sites are not comparable. This contains a massive structure that should live out its full lifespan and not come down for mere profit. This site is even further from Metro, and it is part of a sector plan. These efforts look to me like spot zoning, and the camel's nose seems to be a way to reframe that. Animal 4 is the pig. I believe the manager has told us we have a $30 million deficit. Your plans for new density all over Arlington fail to analyze the impact on our long-term operating budget. As long-range planning folks, you know that new residents cost money, often more than they bring in new taxes. They need larger water, sewer, and stormwater facilities, schools, parks, fire stations, etc. And the piggy bank is empty now. Adding lots more people is not good planning. So let's just not go with rezoning right now. The animals don't favor it.
Time is up, Ms. Bodine.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. And next, we have Brooke Alexander is next. Walking news?
Hi, it's Brooke Alexander. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Just as a little background on me, I live in Ashton Heights. I've lived in Central Arlington for 48 years. I have a Master of Land Use and Environmental Planning from UVA. I was one of 10 citizen planners representing the 5 civic associations surrounding Clarendon who participated in the development of the original Clarendon Sector Plan in 1984. I took a 35-year hiatus from county planning and have just started back about 2 years ago. Lots has changed during my 35-year hiatus. I'm still getting familiar with the LRPC and the Tier 1 and the Tier 2 studies and how things are done currently in Arlington. I will say that I have a number of concerns with the way that Arlington is doing business, but today I'd like to focus on the recreation aspect. To that end, and I know this has been touched on, thank you. At what point do we look at the big picture? We are adding more residents. We are expecting those new residents to have few cars. We are expecting or wanting these new residents to walk or use public transportation for all their needs, and that includes recreation. Sorry. So in looking at the public spaces master plan, I'm not going to have time to read all of this, but within a 5-minute walk, there are certain level of service aspects that are targeted, and there's also a set with a 10-minute walk. And so given the proposed increase in the number of residents with finite land area, we should be looking at incorporating recreational facilities within the building, as Commissioner Guerin had suggested. So some ideas.
Yeah, your time is up, Ms. Alexander. You can submit further comments in writing at the LRPC website about this project. So if you have more to say, which I think you do, please do write it.
Thank you. Unfortunately, the decision will already be made, but I do appreciate
No, you have time to do it.
the offer.
David Howell, you're next. Go off mute, Mr. Howell, if you're on. Okay, yeah, I think you may have dropped off. So we'll move on. Dr. Burr, you're next. Off mute.
Yes, hello. You are the Long Range Planning Committee. Therefore, look at the big picture, as a previous speaker said. This block is unique. The block contains the only large green space that still remains between Clarendon Boulevard and Wilson Boulevard, or between Fairfax Drive and Wilson Boulevard in Virginia Square and Ballston. This green space is far more biophilic than anything that the applicant intends to provide or will provide if the county approves the requested GLUP change and subsequent rezoning and a site plan. To preserve the surrounding community's livability and what can eventually become a major historic resource, the county needs to deny the applicant's request, regardless of any other plans or guidance. There simply is a time to say stop. Stop this request in its tracks now, or as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Byrne. Ms. Miller, do you want to make comments?
No, thank you.
Okay, that wraps up our public comments. I think we're really done for tonight. Is there anything I'm missing? Last. Great, I now declare our meeting adjourned.
Thank you.
Yeah.